All right, so we finally made it through summer. It's September now. We're officially into what many would call model railroad season. And I'm sure a lot of you might be wondering what's going on here with the main layout. We spent all summer working on Fremo modules. Last video on the channel was the start of a T-track build, and there just really hasn't been much progress on the main layout at all. And to tell you guys the truth, there's a little bit more to that story than I had originally shared. You see, in the later part of 2024, my wife and I started thinking about the possibility of moving into a bigger house. And at the end of December, we actually had an accepted offer in on a new house. It was right here in town, really just a couple of blocks from our house. You could see the train tracks from the back porch. It was really something that we were both pretty excited about. And it's a little bit bittersweet because thankfully we didn't waive the inspection on the house, which has become kind of a commonplace for a lot of offers to get accepted in this crazy real estate world that we live in. And because we didn't waive it, we got it done and found out that the house needed a lot more work than we had originally anticipated. And we decided because of that work, it was probably going to be about 2 years before I could even break ground on a layout, on top of the additional financial burden and physical burden of doing a lot of that work myself. So we decided not just not to buy that house, but also just to kind of stay put here as well. But when we decided to stay put here, we also started to think about expanding here. And so we got all the way through the process of having blueprints drawn up for an additional master bedroom being put off the back of the house. And we really thought that was going to happen quicker than it's going to. Ultimately, we ended up pumping the brakes on the addition a little bit too. We still are hoping to have that done if we stay in this house long term, but we decided not to have it done right away. And so that meant that the first half of this year, I really spent not sure if I was going to be tearing down this layout, and because of that, not wanting to do any sort of major project. So unfortunately, I lost 6 months of time to be able to be spent on this layout. Thankfully, I found other effective uses for my time. Those Fremo modules took up a ton of it, and those are now to a point where they're functional. I can take them to shows, and I can kind of just take my time on those as I want to work on them, not work on them in order to meet a deadline, which is pretty great. But now that we know we're going to be here for at least the foreseeable future, and we also know that officially the National NMRA Convention is coming to Rochester in 2028, I think it's time that we make a commitment to making some big progress here on the main layout. So I'm excited to share with you guys what I have gotten done in the last couple of weeks here. I think you're going to be pretty surprised by some of the things that we're working on, some of the things that we unfortunately had to work on. We're now coming at this with a renewed commitment for having this layout somewhat finished by 2028 when the National Convention's in town. So we'll hop right into the update, but before we do, I just have to say really quickly, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We're going to have a lot of progress going on in the next couple of months here on the layout as we make a push for one big project to be finished before the Ops Around the Clock weekend in the end of October. And then after that, there'll be plenty of other big projects happening on the layout as well, in addition to that awesome T-track build that we're working on as well. But anyway, without further ado, let's hop on over to the other side of the layout and check out what's new. So for reasons that will become much more clear as we get into the next clip in today's video, I started to look towards the ceiling of my layout, and when I started looking up, I realized I had a bit of a mildew issue in my basement. I quickly realized that I needed to get that problem under control, so I went out and replaced the dehumidifier that apparently was not working properly, and I also bought stock in hydrogen peroxide. Also picked up a sprayer from Walmart, which ironically ended up coming from a local company here to Genesee County, Chapin Manufacturing, which was pretty cool. And got to work spraying the ceiling down with the hydrogen peroxide and wiping it down in order to remove all of that mildew. Had to move a tarp from place to place to protect the layout, protect everything rolling stock wise on the layout, as well as any scenery that was completed as well. But after about an afternoon's worth of work with the window wide open and a fan blowing, I finally had all of the mildew under control. Now been about a month since the mildew treatment was completed. So far, so good. This basement stayed pretty dry, and I haven't seen any evidence of it coming back. So I think we're in good shape and ready to move on to the next segment. All right, so with the not fun stuff out of the way, mildew abatement complete. Really happy to have the peace of mind down here in the basement that humidity is no longer going to be an issue. Everything is holding up so far pretty well. I haven't seen any mildew come back in the month since that's been completed. But there's other big changes. The big reason I even discovered the mildew was because I was looking up at the ceiling and thinking, man, how much nicer would my layout look with a somewhat finished basement around it. And the method in which I'm hoping to achieve that is on display here in front of you. These are semi-finished, pre-painted white MDF panels that you can get at Lowe's in 4-foot by 8-foot sheets. And this is what I'm going to use to build out the ceiling on top of the layout. There's two big reasons for putting up a ceiling above the layout. The first is, of course, dust prevention. I do have hardwood floors above my layout, which means that, unfortunately, there's a lot of dust that leaks through the cracks and down into the basement. So by putting up this paneling that's going to be relatively airtight, I do hope to circumvent that issue in the long run. Now, the other thing is that any operators that have been here in the last couple of years have commented on how dark certain parts of the layout are. And I've done a lot of lighting down here. If you're ever here, you'll notice lighting fixtures pretty evenly spaced throughout the layout. There are track lights in critical areas, but before I went and added even more light fixtures, I really wanted to see how putting up a white reflective surface on the ceiling was going to help. And these two test panels that I've put in, I've discovered have made a massive world of difference. The Canandaigua side and the Geneva West End are looking much, much brighter than they did already. I do have plans to replace this panel light that you see in frame with a track light that's similar to the other stuff that I've got on the layout already, which should help resolve the issue entirely. But I am super, super happy with how these panels are looking. However, I do think it would be hasty to go ahead and do the entire layout now. These MDF panels are somewhat humidity dependent. I want to see how these are going to work. I want to make sure that the mildew issue does not come back in the basement. So I'm going to roll with these two panels just for probably about the next 6 months, maybe a full year, and just see how they do. I'm going to see how they hold up over the winter. I'm going to see how they hold up going into next summer when it gets humid again. And if they hold up well, we'll plan on doing the whole basement like this, and we'll make sure that it's done prior to the convention getting here in 2028, because that, at this point, is my main goal, is having a semi-finished layout at that point, which means I want all of my base scenery down. I want at least stand-in structures for all of my industries, if not completed structures. There's a lot of scratch building that I want to do, though, and I realistically, 3 years is not enough time to do the amount of scratch building I want to do. But the things that I can finish in the basement are stuff like the ceiling, maybe figuring out something to do with the concrete behind the backdrop in order to make that look a little bit nicer as well. I've gone over it multiple times at this point, but I just flat out cannot finish this basement because it's a poured concrete wall that's got some cracks in it that I need to be able to make sure I monitor. However, doing something like this for the ceiling, where all it is a couple of screws to pull down a panel to get to what's underneath it, and maybe some paint or redoing the backdrops to be taller are a couple of really simple things that I can do to really make this layout feel a lot nicer than it currently is. So we're going to do that over the next 3 years. But like I said, it's going to take some time. But with the talk about the basement itself out of the way, let's talk a little bit about what work has been going on the layout itself. Here's a look at the first really fun thing. This is the final locomotive that I need to complete my Finger Lakes Railway roster. This is the future Finger Lakes number 1703. It's a GP9. That's a former Milwaukee Road unit, a Phase 3 low short hood unit. And as you can see, I've got it in primer here, but if you haven't been watching along on my Talkin' Trains live streams on Monday nights, this will be a brand new project for you. We've been working along for the last couple of weeks on this locomotive. Should be able to get it fully painted here shortly, but there's some fun things to talk about with this unit because I am working on super detailing it. I've got some KV Model Works grills on the side. I've got a ton of Wallace Locomotive Works 3D printed detail parts like the MU stand, MU receptacles, hood-mounted bell, and a few others that are going to be going on the locomotive. So it's really going to be one of my most detailed units that I've ever built, and I'm really excited about seeing how this turns out and finishing up my Finger Lakes roster. But with that out of the way, let's talk about what's going on with the layout itself, because that is the most exciting change that we're going to talk about in this video. Yeah, it was strategic to show you guys the ceiling above Canandaigua from the other side of the backdrop. And that's because there is a completely blank canvas over here in Canandaigua. I just got done, the dust isn't even settled, with ripping up everything. And I mean everything. You may recall me talking in past layout tours and past layout updates about not being 100% happy with the arrangement of track here in Canandaigua. See, last fall when I was getting all of the photos that I need for backdrops, I hung out in Canandaigua for a little bit, took the drone up, and got a better understanding of what track looks like in Pactiv, which is the main industry in Canandaigua. It's a plastic pellet customer. They do injection molding there of different sorts, and it's quite the big complex, which is really, really interesting. And when it came down to it, my rendition, which was just 3 yard tracks on the right-hand side of your screen, just really did not do it justice. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been working on a revised track plan here for Canandaigua. I've been talking about it in my Discord. If it's something that you're interested in following along with, feel free to hit the link down below to join the Discord, and we'll be happy to have you. We've got an awesome community being built over there. But I've been soliciting feedback from my Discord, taking it into account here as we redesign Canandaigua, and pretty happy with what we've come up with. So let's kind of take a look at what the prototype in Canandaigua looks like and what the track plan is that we're going to utilize as well. All right, so I've got you loaded into my track plan here in AnyRail, and figured we'd go through a little bit of my thought process here with the revision of track in Canandaigua. I did a lot of debating with this revision because it really, the Code 83 Atlas that I've been using for the layout, really haven't been all that impressed with. And I really, really, really thought that I was going to end up converting to Pico Code 70 when I did this, but ultimately I decided to let the voice of reason win the day. For the most part, I've got pretty much everything on hand I need to do this revision with Atlas Code 83 track. I can make it run, just as good as I can Pico with just a little bit of elbow grease. And it also means that instead of spending like $300 on assorted turnouts and Pico Code 70 Flex Track, I think the only thing I need to do is buy a single left-hand Code 83 turnout from Atlas. So the rest of it's all on hand. So I got to work tearing everything out, and this is what I'm going to put in its place. The revisions kind of start up here at the turnout that's going to stay right here. You can see that we actually have to move the Canandaigua wine industry out onto the edge of the peninsula here. and we're going to recycle one of the curved turnouts that I pulled out from up here in the track plan to put in on the other side of the number 8 turnout that already exists here. Once we run out of straight track, and this track plan's a little bit different than what's actually there in actuality, but we're going to kind of hug the track plan a little bit closer to the edge of the layout than it was previously to allow as much room as possible back here in active itself. This whole complex, this whole side of the layout now is going to become a pretty large complex, and what I'm hoping will kind of serve as my feature industry on the layout. I really enjoy layouts that have like that feature industry, the one thing that a lot of the ops is centered around, and I think by making these revisions, I'm going to be able to do that. Now, my ops plan doesn't necessarily cater to having a big industry where somebody puts around for a full hour. So I have made the decision that rather than keeping DeLong Clifton Springs, which is actually currently right here on the layout, I'm going to get rid of that and kind of from here down, model this as downtown Canandaigua before getting into the industrial side of Canandaigua. So we'll have a lot of run of negative space. We'll be able to kind of make it feel like you're going somewhere between Phelps Junction here and when you get into the industries in Canandaigua, which is a change that I'm actually really excited for. Having DeLong really didn't add too much operationally. You know, it was 2 cars in, 2 cars out. Really wasn't that amazing of an industry to have. So I think the changes as far as operations are concerned are going to be really great. Now, I do also have to say a thank you to a few of the guys that I know from Finger Lakes, as they're kind of helping me understand the way track is utilized in Pactive. I have a good understanding of these 2 tracks here being their plastic pellet unloading tracks, and then there's also a warehouse where they bring other sorts of different materials for the injection molding process. And then they've also got a pair of storage tracks over here. Now, I'm likely only going to probably use one storage track, and then the other track will just be used as headroom for the runaround, which is still going to exist in this iteration of the track plan. But there's a lot of big changes here, and I think it's really ultimately going to turn into something really fun for an operator to putt around in for a good portion of half the session. I'm really excited to bring you guys along as we try to get this done, and it's going to happen pretty quick. I've got a shakedown session to have prior to Hop Around the Clock at the end of October, and I would like to have this done prior to the shakedown session so that it can be put through its paces. Looking forward to bringing you guys along with me as we work on it. So there you have it, guys. A triumphant return to the main layout now in the books. I am super excited for everything that we've got going on in the next couple of months as we make a push towards getting things ready for Hop Around the Clock, and in the next few years as we make a push to be ready for the National Convention when it's here in 2028. There is a ton that needs to be done. I really hope that you guys are interested in coming along on this ride with me. If you are and you're new to the channel, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Would love to see you again in the next video, that's for sure. Let me know what you think down in the comment section, and also leave a thumbs up if you'd like, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.